Hey everybody, this is Mike from the One Stop Co-op Shop, and today I'm reviewing Dungeon Legends, a solo and cooperative deck-building game of dungeon adventure. And disclaimer that I was sent a review copy of this one. In Dungeon Legends, your characters will play in one of 5 scenarios with unique locations and effects, fighting off monsters so they don't advance too far toward the castle and cause an instant loss, playing cards from your hand for attacks and defense and movement, and deck building into stronger cards you can boost for even more powerful effects. So let's discuss 5 of the key things to know about Dungeon Legends. So first, from our number 5 point, which I think is the least important to know about the game, is the cooperation and the player count balance. And this is a mix for my taste. So first, to talk about solo, you combine 2 characters into one deck, picking the best cards from each of them to make it. And on the positive side for this true solo experience, you get to freely assign the actions to your different characters, so it gives you a lot more tactical play than you have in multiplayer. But that also makes the game a lot easier, and that's compounded by the fact that you start with fewer monsters at lower player counts, whereas you have a whole bunch to start at higher player counts. And while you have more endurance to deal with enemies at higher player counts, I find that overall it's tuned quite a bit more difficult because you're all deck building more slowly. The deck building is getting spread among the players. It's harder to deal with the monsters because after you attack one, by the time it comes back around to your turn, they may have already advanced twice. But with more players, you have to balance the enemies and the competing objectives more. So yeah, this one is a little interesting because the difficulty doesn't scale well, but the choices of different player counts can be pretty cool. Next to number 4 are the characters and the deck building. This one is also a mix for my taste. Now, I describe this game as a deck builder, so you might wonder why the deck building is all the way back at number 4. But that's because you actually don't do a lot of it. So you have 3 cards to choose from, which is nice because you can pick the ones that you might like best. And they also go to the top of your deck, which is awesome, but you're not doing this a lot in the game. I would say on average in my games, I'm deck building into 6 to 10 cards total, split among all the players, so again, pretty minimal. Now, the 4 characters themselves do have a unique deck for each of them. They have slightly different stats in some ways. And then you get to add in these different skill tokens that give you bonus actions throughout the game. And all that's fun. The cards you deck build into are powerful. But yes, at the same time, it's a fairly minimal set of differences. You're not going to feel like you're playing a vastly different character game to game. Coming next to my number 3, that's the monster management and drawing these cards at the end of each player's turn and slowly pushing towards auto loss. And this is a mix for my taste as well. On the negative side, this does feel very swingy. There are events in the deck that mean for that round you don't add any more monsters and you don't really get that time pressure increasing. Now, they can be pretty negative and punishing, but if on the other hand you get a ton of monsters one after the other, it can really make things challenging. And then also you'll quickly find the monsters pretty repetitive because you use 20 cards from this universal deck and only 10 cards that key to the specific scenario you're playing. So you're going to see mostly the same people and events repeatedly each time you play. But on the positive side, getting your characters to the different places where the monsters are, fighting them before they advance too far, that's all pretty interesting. Especially when you combine it with the scenarios and the locations and trying to balance keeping the monsters in check while also progressing your scenario goals. I like all of that. For my number 2, I'm looking at the card play in the game, and this is my only full-on pro for this review, although it's still pretty simplistic. I would compare the deck-building kind of card play in this one to something at the same level as Clank. It's pretty straightforward. You have cards with some icons on them. You're going to play out your whole hand each round. But the nice thing is that between the movement, the locations that you can generally spend dust, one of your resources to activate, the different lines of monsters, the actual sort of puzzle and tactics of playing out your cards and figuring out what you want to do on your turn can be pretty fun. You can pull off cool combos of attacks and things, especially once you get more powerful cards. And when you add in your skill track and fairies you've earned from other effects throughout the game, I think there actually are some nice meaty choices in the tactics of the game, again, for a more casual, straightforward card play. And finally, for our number 1 point, the thing I think is most important to know about the game, I'm looking at the scenarios, and this is another mix for my taste. So there are 5 scenarios in the game, and first of all, each of them has their own tuck box. There are also nice tuck boxes for each of the character classes, so I think the organization of the game is excellent. And each scenario has 6 locations, most of them unique, 10 unique cards for the monster and event deck, as I already mentioned. And they bring in really cool mechanics, like in one, you're pushing a minecart around, trying to load it up. In another one, you're trying to put out fires. In another one, you're trying to stargaze at different planets and trying to get them in specific spots of the monster line. But on the negative side, similar to other things I've mentioned in this review, the balance and the swinginess can be pretty strong, especially in the initial setup of locations. Like if you watch my playthrough, I had the easiest, best location in a prime spot, whereas if it had been like way farther away from the castle, the scenario would have been drastically more difficult. Similarly, the scenario will seed really bad or negative events and special monsters in the deck, and if they come out early or late, that can change things up greatly. And with things I've already mentioned, like the player count balance, you would want the game to have a really nice difficulty scaling option, but only the first scenario has an easy, normal, and hard mode. All the rest just have one difficulty, and there's no official rule, at least nothing I could find in the rules, that allows you to kind of vary up the challenge level of the game, which is going to make these 5 scenarios feel a bit more samey and repetitive as you play them more. So some good things. It is fun to explore each scenario, but some frustrations too. So overall, you might like Dungeon Legends if you enjoy light deck builders with some other gameplay included. I think fans of Clank might enjoy this one. Also, if you want a straightforward deck builder that'll be family friendly, that your kids can probably play along with you, I think this fits the bill. But on the other hand, if you want consistent difficulty, if you don't want kind of swingy gameplay and an overall easy experience from any of the scenarios, you're going to have to either house rule this one or just not play it entirely. And if you want to see the game in action, I had a playthrough a few weeks ago. You can check it out. Thanks for watching, everybody. Good gaming, and I'll see you at the next stop.